For close to a decade, one national team has carried the label of a golden generation without a trophy to match. A core of genuinely world-class players, peaking together across roughly 2 full World Cup cycles. Previous tournaments produced a third-place finish and a couple of quarterfinal exits, strong but short of the ultimate prize. By this tournament, several of that core group were entering the later stages of their international careers.
This was realistically one of the last realistic windows for that specific group to finish the job together.
The group stage draw looked manageable, without an obvious traditional heavyweight standing directly in the way. Results were solid but not spotless, enough to advance without ever looking like the tournament's most dominant side. The round of 32 brought a genuine scare, a 2-goal deficit against a well-organized West African side. A comeback, completed in extra time, kept the run alive by the smallest possible margin. Keep that near miss in mind. It turned out to be the first of 2 matches decided by only the finest details. The round of 16 brought a co-host nation still dealing with its own well-publicized off-field distractions. This match went considerably more smoothly, a comfortable 4-goal display that settled things well before full time. Afterwards, some players described the result as a form of justice, pointed reference to an earlier controversy. That controversy involved a red card controversially lifted for the opposing team just days before the match.
Whatever the underlying motivation, the result itself was thoroughly convincing, without any late drama required.
It advanced the golden generation to the quarterfinals, 1 win away from a first semifinal in over 3 decades. The quarterfinal opponent arrived as one of the tournament's most balanced, in-form sides, unbeaten so far. Then, before kickoff, real misfortune struck. The team's first-choice goalkeeper was ruled out through injury. His replacement, a capable but far less experienced option, was thrown into one of the biggest matches of his career.
For long stretches, that backup performed admirably, holding a talented opponent to a tightly contested scoreline.
The match reached extra time locked at 1 apiece, a genuinely even contest between 2 well-matched sides. Then, attempting to control a long-range strike, the backup goalkeeper's handling let the ball squirm loose. An alert opposing substitute pounced on the loose rebound, finishing calmly into an open net. That single mistake in the final minutes proved to be the difference between 2 very different tournament endings. Final score, 2-1, and the Golden Generation's run ended 1 match short of the semifinals.
It's genuinely difficult to separate misfortune from pattern in a result decided by 1 goalkeeping mistake.
On one hand, a first-choice goalkeeper's injury is close to pure bad luck, unrelated to anything else. On the other, this specific generation has now exited multiple major tournaments in tightly contested late moments. A prior tournament ended in a similarly tense quarterfinal, decided by the smallest of margins as well.
2 data points don't prove a permanent pattern, but they're enough to make the question worth asking honestly.
The coaching staff afterward pointed mainly to the injury, a factor genuinely outside anyone's direct control. That's a fair point. Teams can prepare for opponents. They can't fully prepare for a starting goalkeeper going down.
Still, championship-level squads are often measured by how well their depth handles exactly this kind of moment.
A backup goalkeeper thrown into a quarterfinal is always a downgrade, even when he performs well overall. That downgrade doesn't guarantee a mistake, but it does raise the odds of one occurring at the worst possible time. This time, the odds caught up with the team in the final minutes of a match that was there to be won. It's worth remembering how comfortably this same team dispatched a co-host nation just 1 round earlier. The quality was clearly there throughout this tournament. The finishing margins simply didn't cooperate at the very end. That's often the real difference between a golden generation that wins a title and one that's simply remembered fondly. Fine margins, not a lack of overall quality, tend to separate the 2 outcomes at this level of competition. Several members of this core group are now approaching the tail end of their realistic international careers. The next tournament cycle will likely feature a meaningfully different roster, built around a younger foundation. Whether that next group can match this one's peak quality is at this point a genuinely open question. What isn't in question is what this specific generation actually built across the better part of a decade. Multiple deep tournament runs, a peak world ranking near the very top, and a reputation for genuine quality.
A title never arrived, but plenty of genuinely great teams throughout history never quite closed that specific gap.
That doesn't erase the years of consistently excellent football this specific group produced along the way. It just means their story gets filed, fairly or not, alongside other great teams remembered without a title. Sports history is full of those teams, admired widely, discussed at length, and ultimately trophyless regardless. That's an uncomfortable way for a decade of consistently good football to be remembered by casual fans. It's also, unfortunately, how sports memory tends to work. The ending shapes the story more than it probably should.
A more balanced view holds both things together: real quality across the decade and real misfortune at the very end.
Neither erases the other, even if only one of them tends to make the highlight reels afterward. For the backup goalkeeper specifically, this result will likely follow him for a long stretch of his career. An unfair outcome for a young player thrown into an impossible situation. Goalkeeping errors get remembered longer and more vividly than almost any other kind of mistake in football.
That's simply the nature of the position. The last line, with the least room for a single bad moment.
He'll get more chances, presumably, across a career that's really just beginning at the international level. How he responds to this specific moment will likely say more about his career than the moment itself did. For the golden generation as a whole, the calendar is now working against a repeat of this exact roster.
Age, injuries, and the simple passage of time will reshape this squad considerably before the next cycle begins.
Whoever inherits the captaincy and the creative responsibility next will do so without this specific supporting cast. That's a normal, unavoidable part of how national team cycles work, regardless of how good any single group was.
Fans of this program will likely spend years debating whether this was truly their best realistic chance.
There's no clean answer to that question, only the specific way this particular tournament actually ended. A 2-goal deficit erased in extra time to survive the first knockout round, then a convincing round of 16 win. Then, in the quarterfinal, an injury, a mistake, and a margin of 1 single goal in extra time. That's the full shape of the story, in order, without embellishment or a tidier ending attached to it. Sports doesn't always deliver tidy endings, especially for teams built around a specific aging window of talent.
Sometimes the story simply ends where the match is ended, without a deeper meaning waiting underneath it.
Other times, distance and hindsight reveal a pattern that wasn't obvious in the moment the ball rolled loose. Right now, it's simply too soon to know which version of that story this particular exit will become.
What's clear immediately is the shape of the final few minutes: composed, tight, and then suddenly not. A golden generation's most realistic remaining chance closed on a fumbled save, not a moment of individual brilliance.
That's a quieter, less satisfying way for a story like this one to end compared to how it might be told. It's also, in its own way, an honest reflection of how thin the margins actually are at this level. A full decade of real quality, closed out by one goalkeeping mistake nobody could have fully prepared for. Both of those facts are true at once, and neither one needs to cancel the other out to be understood.
Some windows close with a trophy. Others close with a story like this one, unfinished but not unremarkable.